I will never forget the sound of that crying, because it was not a normal cry. It was a broken, choked moan, as if someone were trying not to scream while their soul was being split in two. I had just arrived from work when I opened the door to my house and heard it. My wife Emily was sitting on the edge of the sofa, hugging herself with her face pale as a sheet and her eyes completely lost. When she saw me, she tried to get up, but her legs did not respond. She only managed to look at me and move her lips without any sound coming out. In that instant, I knew something terrible had happened. I ran to her, dropped my briefcase, and knelt in front of her trembling body. We had shared 38 years of marriage illnesses, debts, children, funerals, laughter, and losses, but I had never seen her like this. Her hands were cold and rigid, and every time she tried to speak, her throat only produced a weak sound like a broken sigh. I asked her once, twice, 3 times what had happened, but she could not answer me. She just cried without tears at first, as if the pain were too great even to come out through her eyes. Then my daughter Sarah appeared from the hallway. She was walking fast, nervous with her cell phone in her hand. Her breathing was agitated and her hair was messy. She looked at me and said hurriedly, "Dad, when I arrived, she was already like this. I do not know what happened." Something in her voice sounded learned, rehearsed, almost mechanical. She explained that she had come to visit her mother, that she found her crying in the kitchen, that she did not understand anything. But while she spoke, she avoided looking me in the eyes. That detail, so small, was the first one that made me feel that something did not fit. But before continuing, I would like to know if you subscribe to the channel William's Revenge Stories, and if you liked the video. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories. Now let us continue. I helped my wife lie down on the sofa. I brought her water, took her pulse, and arranged a blanket over her shoulders. She tried to say my name several times, but every attempt ended in a voiceless sob. My daughter Sarah moved from one side to the other, excessively attentive to correct. She prepared tea, picked up things that no one asked her to, and spoke non-stop about unimportant matters. I watched her in silence. Something inside me, an old intuition that I thought I had lost over the years, began to wake up slowly. Several minutes passed until my wife managed to utter a few words. Her voice was barely a thread, but enough to break my heart when I heard her whisper, "I am afraid." Only that. She did not say why, she did not say of whom, only fear. I took her face between my hands and forced her to look at me. She had a barely visible bruise on her left wrist, clumsily hidden under the sleeve of her sweater. My daughter stepped forward immediately and said, "Surely." She hit herself without realizing it. "Dad, lately she trips a lot. That excuse fell on me like a slap in the face. Did you touch her?" I asked her without raising my voice. My daughter froze for just a second, but it was enough for me to notice. Then she composed herself, offended. "How can you say that, Dad?" She responded, bringing her hand to her chest. "I would never hurt my mother." My wife from the sofa began to cry harder. I hugged her with one arm, and with the other, I kept looking at my daughter without saying anything. I did not argue, I did not accuse, but inside me something began to break slowly, like a crack that opens without making noise. I took Emily to our room so she could rest. I gave her the medicine for her nerves that our doctor had prescribed months ago. While she fell asleep, still trembling, I returned to the living room. Sarah was still there, sitting looking at her cell phone with apparent tranquility. I asked her to leave. She said she preferred to stay in case something happened. Her insistence made me uncomfortable more than I could explain. I waited for her to go to the bathroom for a moment. Then, without wasting time, I walked straight to the small room where the security camera system is located, which I installed years ago after some robberies in the neighborhood. I never thought I would review those recordings looking for someone of my own blood. My hands were shaking when I turned on the monitor. I reviewed the recording from the morning, then the one from noon. Everything seemed normal until I reached an exact strip of 38 minutes where there was absolutely nothing. The image froze. The clock kept moving forward, but there was no movement. There were no records. Nothing. That had never happened before. I advanced a few more minutes, and the image came back suddenly. The first thing I saw was my wife on the kitchen floor, curled up, holding her arm. Then I saw my daughter walking fast toward the door, fixing her hair, breathing heavily. The scene lasted only seconds. I felt my blood turn into ice. I rewound the video several times, but the missing section did not appear. It had been deleted with full intention. I did not doubt it. I turned off the monitor and leaned against the wall. My chest hurt, not from a heart attack, but from something worse, betrayal. I went back slowly to the living room. My daughter had come out of the bathroom and asked me if everything was okay. I looked at her for a long time before answering. The girl I had protected, raised and defended from the whole world, was now standing in front of me like a complete stranger. "Everything is fine," I told her. "You can go rest peacefully." She watched me with suspicion, as if trying to guess how much I already knew. That night, I did not sleep. I sat by my wife's bed, listening to her irregular breathing, watching the shadows travel across the walls. Every time she moaned in her dreams, I felt a knot in my throat. Never in my 62 years had I felt a rage so silent, so deep, so dangerous. At 3 a.m, my wife opened her eyes. She stared at me. This time she did manage to speak very slowly, as if every word cost her a piece of life. "Do not trust her," she whispered. I brought my face close to hers. "Tell me what happened," I asked her. Her lips trembled. "She forced me," she said. "She pushed me. She screamed at me. I did not want to sign." Sign. That word lit a brutal alarm in my mind. Sign what? Softly from outside. "Dad, is everything okay?" My wife went mute. Terror took over her face again. I squeezed her hand tightly. "Yes," I answered. "Everything is okay." My daughter left. I looked at my wife again. Tears were now running uncontrollably down her cheeks. "Tomorrow I will tell you everything," she murmured. "Now I am afraid." "No one is going to touch you while I am alive," I promised her in a low voice. And while she went back to sleep, I made a decision that would change our lives forever, to pretend I knew nothing until I found the complete truth. Because what had happened in those 38 minutes erased from the cameras had not only destroyed the peace of my home, it had unleashed the worst betrayal a father can face. And this was just the beginning. At dawn, the house smelled of medicine, cold coffee, and old fear. My wife was still asleep, with a frown even in her sleep, as if her body did not dare to rest completely. I remained seated by her side until she opened her eyes. When she did, she looked at me with that tired tenderness that only shared years give, and for a moment I thought everything had been a nightmare. But the bruise on her wrist was still there, dark, undeniable. "How do you feel?" I asked her in a low voice. "Tired," she responded, and ashamed. That word hurt me more than any blow. "You have nothing to be ashamed of," I told her. "The one who should feel shame was not you." She did not want to keep talking. Her silence was a wall built by terror. I decided not to pressure her. I prepared breakfast, taking care not to make noise. While the bread was toasting, my mind inevitably traveled to the past, to the girl who once was our daughter, to the young woman who promised to take care of us when life got uphill, to the woman who was now sleeping in the guest room of our house with a secret that smelled of betrayal. Our daughter was always strong. Since she was little, she had character, a firm way of walking through the world, as if nothing could knock her down. When she was born, I held her for the first time under a yellow hospital light and swore that no one would ever hurt her. Her mother raised her with sweetness. I formed her with discipline, and together we thought we had done a good job. She grew up, studied, made mistakes, got up again, married poorly, twice returned home crying, more than once. We were always there. That is why when years ago she asked us to stay and live with us for a while until she got settled, we did not hesitate. Her mother welcomed her with open arms. I nodded without asking too much. I thought she was a daughter looking for shelter. I never thought she would be a daughter looking for control. The first months were quiet. She cooked with her mother, accompanied her to the doctor, tidied the house. Little by little, she began to make decisions that no one asked her to. She changed schedules, rearranged furniture, controlled visits. "It is for your own good," she said. "You two are already old. I attributed it to excessive care. Today I understand that it was the beginning of something dark." While we were having breakfast, my wife barely touched her tea. Her hands shook, holding the cup. "She will arrive in an hour," she murmured suddenly. "Who's Sarah?" I felt a chill run down my back. "How do you know she left last night, upset?" Emily said. "She always comes back when she's upset." The phrase froze me. There was fear in her voice, a learned fear. I decided that today I would not allow her to intimidate her for even a second. "You do not have to see her if you do not want to," I told her. "I will talk to her." "No," she whispered, clinging to the blanket. "If you do not face her today, she will do it later, and it will be worse." I nodded. She was right. Silence had already done us enough damage. When the clock struck 10, I heard the sound of a car stopping in front of the house. My stomach contracted. My wife closed her eyes. I squeezed her hand and walked to the door with a calm I did not feel. I opened it. There she was, well-dressed, made up with precision, the phone in her hand, and a rehearsed smile on her lips. "Dad," she said. "How did Mom wake up?" "You tell me." I answered. "You were with her when it all started." For the first time, her smile fell apart a little. She entered without asking for permission, as she had always done. She walked to the kitchen, left her purse on the table, and began preparing coffee as if nothing were different. "Dad, do not exaggerate," she said. "Mom got nervous over a silly thing." "A silly thing does not leave bruises," I replied. She turned slowly. Her eyes hardened. "What are you talking about?" "About her wrist." Silence fell between us like a slab. She took a deep breath, controlling her irritation. "Dad, Mom is clumsy. She always hits herself on the furniture." 38 years living with her," I answered, "and I never saw a hit like that." My daughter held my gaze. For an instant, I saw in her eyes the girl who asked for forgiveness when she lied. But that girl was no longer there. She was replaced by a woman who knew how to fake very well. "If you came to argue, I better go," she said, taking her purse. "Not yet," I responded firmly. "I want to talk about the papers you made her sign yesterday." Her hand stopped dead. She looked at me with open eyes, without blinking. "What papers do not pretend?" I replied. "My wife said that word last night, half asleep. Sign." She let out a short laugh. "Dad, you were stressed. It was just a bank document. Nothing more." Why then was she crying as if she were being killed? Her expression changed. This time she did not compose herself immediately. "Because she is weak?" she responded finally. "Because she no longer understands how the world works. Someone has to take charge of things." "Take charge or take ownership?" I asked her. She took a step toward me. "Watch your words. Watch your actions," I replied. My wife appeared at the bedroom door, pale, trembling. Sarah saw her, and for a second control escaped her face. "Mom," she said with a fake sweetness, "Dad is confused. I told you this would happen if you did not take your medicine." My wife lowered her gaze like a guilty child. "Do not lie," I said. "No one here is confused." My daughter exploded. "You two are no longer capable of handling your things," she shouted. "I am trying to save what little you have left before you lose it all." "The only thing we are losing is you," I answered. And in that instant, I knew it was no longer a family discussion. It was a war for the soul of my home. After that argument, the air in the house became unbreathable. My daughter walked from one side to the other with short, nervous steps, like a caged beast. My wife remained standing by the bedroom door, not daring to enter or leave, trapped between fear and guilt. I felt like a stranger in my own home, as if every piece of furniture, every wall, every object had changed owners without me noticing. Sarah was the first to break the silence. "Dad, I just want to help you," she said with a softer tone. "But you are not doing your part. Help is not imposed with blows or shouting," I responded, "and even less with lies. She pressed her lips together, containing her rage. "You do not understand the danger you are in," she insisted. "If we do not sign soon, everything you have can be lost." "Lost to whom?" I asked. She did not answer. She limited herself to taking her purse and walking toward the door. "I am going to come back later," she said, "when you are calmer." Upon leaving, she did not slam the door. She closed the door with disturbing care. That gesture shook me more than any scream. Her calm was fake, built on a dangerous intention. My wife began to cry in silence. I hugged her. I felt her small body trembling against mine. "You should not have confronted her like that," she whispered. "Now she will be worse." "Worse than what she already did?" "No," I answered with a knot in my throat, "but I can no longer keep quiet." I took her to the sofa and sat beside her. Her hands were freezing. "Tell me," I asked her. "Everything. From the beginning." She shook her head slowly. "No, not now. If I say it out loud, it will be real." "It is already real, my love," I said. "And as long as you keep it, she will continue to have power over you." My wife closed her eyes. Tears slid down her cheeks slowly. "It started months ago," she whispered. "First with words, then with screams, then with threats. She told me that you were old, that soon you would not be able to decide anything, that I had to sign to protect you. I did not understand anything. Every time I asked, she got upset. What did she want you to sign? I asked. House papers, bank papers, powers of attorney, she said. She said it was for your own good. I felt a frozen void in my chest. You never told me anything, I murmured. Because she forbade me to do it, she confessed. She told me that if I spoke to you, you would get angry with me and I would end up alone. And I was afraid. There was the truth, the oldest weapon of all fear. When did she hit you? I asked with a broken voice. Emily hesitated. Yesterday, when I refused to sign this time. My breathing became heavy. Where? In the kitchen, she said. She pushed me against the table. I fell. She squeezed my wrist so I would sign. I screamed, but she covered my mouth. The image went through me like a dagger. I had to stand up so as not to lose control. And then she started crying as if I had done something to her. She sobbed. She said you would not believe me. Then I heard the door. You were already arriving. My heart beat with fury. That is why when I entered you were already crying, I said. She nodded, broken. She told me that if I spoke, she would make you look like a senile old man in front of everyone. I felt nausea. That is not going to happen again, I swore to her. I promise you. I helped my wife lie down for a while. When she fell asleep from exhaustion, I went straight to the camera room, again. I turned on the system with a bitter sensation. I was no longer looking for security. I was looking for truth. I reviewed hour by hour. I advanced carefully. And there I saw it. The gap. Exact. 38 minutes manually deleted. It was not a technical failure. Someone had entered the system. Someone who knew how to do it. I looked for the access logs. There was an additional user created weeks ago. A fake name. But the creation date coincided with the day our daughter moved permanently into our house to take care of us. My pulse accelerated. I checked further back. Previous days. I found small cuts at specific times. Nothing as long as yesterday's. Just seconds. Rehearsals. Tests. Like someone learning to use a weapon before shooting. And then something happened that made me sit up suddenly. A secondary camera was still active. An old camera. Almost forgotten. Installed only to cover the back hallway leading to the kitchen. Its quality was bad, the angle imperfect, but it was recording. I looked for the exact time of the attack. My hands were sweating. I advanced second by second, and I saw her. I saw my wife from behind washing a plate. I saw my daughter enter slowly. She closed the door. She walked slowly. She said something I could not hear. My wife turned. She shook her head several times. She seemed to plead. Then Sarah took her by the arm with force. My wife resisted. She pushed her against the table. My wife fell to the floor. And I had to cover my mouth not to scream, when I saw her own fingers squeezing the fragile wrist of the woman I had loved all my life. Then she forced her to sign. Then she let her go. Then in front of the camera, my daughter began to cry, as if she were the victim. I remained motionless. The world spun around me. I do not remember how much time I spent watching that scene over and over again. The only thing I know is that something died inside me in that dark room. When I finally turned off the monitor, my knees no longer supported me. I sat on the floor. I cried in silence. Not for me, for the daughter I thought I knew and who no longer existed. At that moment, my daughter returned to the house. I heard the door open. I dried my tears. I put everything away. I went out as if I knew nothing. She looked at me with superiority. "Did you talk?" she asked. "Yes," I answered. "And did you sign?" I looked at her steadily. "Not yet." She blinked, irritated. "Dad, do not play with me." "I am not doing it," I replied. "But I warn you something. This house is still mine, and as long as I breathe, no one is going to tear anything away from us." Our eyes met like knives, and I knew that from that instant there was no turning back. After seeing the recording, nothing was ever the same inside me, although, on the outside, I forced myself to seem like the same man as always. I walked through the house with slow, measured steps, faking normality. I prepared coffee. I watered the plants. I asked my wife if she wanted soup for lunch. Every daily gesture was an immense effort, not to let escape the pain, the rage, and the disappointment that burned me inside. Sarah moved through the house as if she were already its owner. She opened drawers, checked papers, made calls in a low voice from the patio. I watched her without her noticing, as one observes a stranger invading sacred territory. I no longer saw the girl I had taken by the hand to school. I saw a woman capable of hitting her own mother, without her pulse trembling. And my wife, on the other hand, was different. She walked with her gaze down her shoulders, shrugged as if every step were a weight. She only dared to look at me when my daughter was not around. And in those brief moments in the shared silence, we spoke with our eyes. By mid-afternoon, I finally managed to be alone with her. Sarah went out to run an errand. As soon as I heard the door slam, I approached my wife. She was sitting by the window, looking toward the street, like someone waiting for something she does not want to arrive. "Now, yes," I told her in a very low voice. "Now you can tell me everything." She took a deep breath, like someone diving underwater before an abyss. "I saw it in your eyes this morning," she whispered. "You already know." I did not answer. "It was not necessary. I did not want you to see it like that," she continued. "She is your daughter, and that hurts more than the blows." I felt a knot in my throat. "It hurts more to hide it," I replied, "because silence protects her, not us." My wife squeezed her hands on her lap. She told me that if I spoke, you would die of shame, that no one would believe that her own daughter was capable of something like that. She said I looked like a crazy old woman, that I would end up in an asylum. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces hearing those words. "She manipulated you with fear," I said, "and that is also violence." She nodded slowly. "She made me sign several times," she confessed. "First, small documents, authorizations, then bank papers. Yesterday was different. Yesterday was a power of attorney. Everything. I felt I was handing over my life, and also yours." My hands began to tremble. "Do you know where those papers are now?" "In her purse," she whispered. "She always keeps them there, as if she feared we would take them away." The purse. I remembered how many times I had seen my daughter guard that purse with excessive zeal. Now everything made sense. "Does anyone else know what is happening here?" I had asked. She denied. "Only you." "Then you are going to trust me without hesitation?" I asked her. "Whatever happens, do not face her alone. Do not answer her. Do not sign anything. I will take care of everything." She hesitated for a few seconds. Then she looked me in the eyes with a firmness I had not seen in years. "Okay." That simple okay was the first act of bravery I saw in her after a long time. When my daughter returned, she brought a box of fast food as if nothing had happened. She smiled. She talked about trivialities. She sat down to eat in front of us without asking if we were hungry. I watched her without missing a detail. Every movement, every gesture, every word. She was sure of herself. Too sure. "Tomorrow we should go to the bank," she said suddenly, looking at her mother. "We need to solve the issue once and for all." My wife lowered her gaze. "I do not feel well," she responded in a low voice. "Not today." Sarah rested the silverware with force. "This cannot wait," she replied. "Dad is not up to dealing with these things either." "I can decide for myself," I said calmly. She looked at me with barely disguised contempt. "It is not about you, Dad. It is about avoiding problems." The problem was already created by you, I thought, but I did not say it. After eating, she locked herself in the room she used as her own. I took the opportunity to sit next to my wife. I took her hand. "Tonight, I'm going to prepare something," I whispered to her. "You trust me?" She nodded, trembling a little. That night, when everyone was sleeping, I went back to the camera room. I copied the recording onto an external memory drive. 3 times. I stored it in different places. One in my jacket, another under the mattress, another inside an empty jar in the garden. If something happened to me, that proof had to survive. Then I went to my desk. I looked for the house deeds, my bank documents, everything that had legal value. I checked them one by one. Some were missing exactly the ones that appeared in the recording, forcing my wife to sign. Everything fits, I thought. That early morning, I almost did not sleep. Every creak of the house made me open my eyes. Every shadow seemed like a threat. But I also felt something new grow inside me, a determination that gave me strength again. At dawn, my daughter appeared early dressed to go out. "Today we are going to the bank," she assured. I already asked for the appointment. My wife looked at me scared. I squeezed her hand under the table. "Today we will all go," I said. My daughter was surprised. "You do not need to go, Dad." "I am the owner of the house and the money," I responded firmly. "I believe I have the right to be present." She smiled coldly. "As you wish." In the car, the silence was thick. My wife was in the back seat. I was in the front next to her. Our clash of glances was a silent duel. I knew the truth. She did not know I knew, and that was my advantage. Arriving at the bank, Sarah went ahead, as if she knew every corner. She greeted the employee who attended her by name. That detail confirmed something else for me. She had been preparing everything for a long time. They made us pass into an office. They closed the door. The employee took out a thick folder. She placed it on the table. "Here we have the documents for the signature," she said. "Total power of attorney, asset, administration, legal representation." My wife trembled. I rested my hand on hers. "Before signing anything," I said with a firm voice, "I want to see every sheet calmly." My daughter frowned. "Dad, this is already discussed." "Not with you," I interrupted her. "With the law." A tense silence fell. I reviewed every page slowly. My heart beat strongly, but my hands were steady. There was no doubt. Everything was designed to leave my wife and me without any control over our own lives. When I finished, I looked up. "We are not going to sign any of this," I announced. My daughter stood up suddenly. "You cannot do this," she shouted. "Everything depends on this signature." "No," I answered. "Everything depends on the truth." Her face paled for just a second, then it hardened again. "You do not know what you are talking about." I looked at her steadily. "I know everything." And that was the first time I saw fear cross fleetingly the eyes of my own daughter. The fear in my daughter's eyes lasted only a second, but it was enough to confirm to me that she already knew too much. She lowered her gaze, took a deep breath, and put back on the mask of security she also knew how to use. The bank employee looked at us without understanding the tension that was breathed in that closed office where not only papers were disputed, but entire destinies. "Dad, you are exaggerating," she said with a forced calm. "Mom accepted all this months ago. I do not understand. Why now she acts surprised?" My wife shuddered beside me. I squeezed her hand tighter. She accepted under pressure, I responded, and that invalidates any signature. The bank employee frowned, uncomfortable. Sir, if there is any family conflict, perhaps you should resolve it outside the institution. No, I interrupted her. This is going to be resolved right here. I looked directly at my daughter. Tell her the truth, I ordered her. Tell her now. She let out a nervous laugh. Brief, almost hysterical. The truth about what, Dad? About the blows. The silence was so heavy it seemed it could be cut with a knife. My wife let out a choked moan. The bank employee opened her eyes with horror. My daughter took a step back. Are you crazy? She whispered. What kind of lie is that? Then happened what I will never forget. My wife slowly let go of my hand and stood up trembling from head to toe. For the first time, she did not lower her gaze. For the first time in months, she raised her head with dignity. Do not lie any more, she said with a broken voice. You pushed me. You squeezed my wrist. You screamed at me. You forced me to sign, and now you want me to do it again. Sarah turned pale. For an instant, she looked like a child trapped in her own lie. Mom, you're confused. No, she shouted with a strength I thought lost. Confused I was when I thought you were taking care of me. Now I know you only wanted to keep everything. The bank employee got up from her seat. Sir and madam, this is very serious. If there was violence, we must report it immediately. My daughter reacted suddenly desperate. No, she exclaimed. This is a misunderstanding. My father is influencing my mother. He was always like that. I took a step forward. Enough. I slowly took the external memory drive out of my jacket pocket and placed it on the table. Here is what happened in the kitchen, I said with a firm voice. Everything was recorded. My daughter recoiled as if she had been hit. Her eyes opened disproportionately. That does not exist. It exists, I responded, and we will see it when I decide. For now, it is enough for you to know that the truth is no longer only in your power. The bank employee looked from one to the other, not knowing who to turn to. Finally, she picked up the phone. I'm going to call security, she announced. My daughter closed her eyes for a few seconds. Then she opened them and looked at me with pure hate. If you do this, you destroy me, she whispered. You destroyed yourself, I answered her. I am only saving your mother. Security arrived in a few minutes. They asked us to leave the office. While we walked down the hallway, Sarah took my arm with force. Dad, please. No, she said in a low voice. All this got out of hand. I looked at her with a pain I did not know I could still feel. It was not a mistake, I told her. It was a choice. My wife walked behind me, leaning on my shoulder. Every step of hers was an act of bravery. We left the bank without signing anything. In the parking lot, my daughter burst into tears. She knelt in front of us, begging, Do not ruin me, Dad. I beg you. I only wanted to secure our future. The future is not secured by destroying those who gave you life, I answered firmly. My wife looked at her one last time. I raised you to love, not to attack, she said. And today you broke my heart. She got into the car with me without looking back. In the rearview mirror, I saw my daughter left alone in the middle of the parking lot, crying, defeated for the first time. On the way back home reigned a silence loaded with emotions. I felt that something huge had broken, but that paradoxically we had also taken the first step toward freedom. When we arrived, I helped my wife lie down. She was exhausted physically and emotionally. I sat next to her and brought her a glass of water. Thank you for defending me, she whispered. I thought I would die with this kept inside. I hugged her with all my soul. Never again will you be alone. She closed her eyes. I stayed watching her for a long time. I knew it was not over yet. I knew my daughter would not accept defeat so easily, and I was right. The phone rang that same night. It was Sarah. If you continue on this path, she said, without beating around the bush, I am going to tell everyone that you are out of your mind, that you mistreat Mom, that you invented that recording. Do it? I responded. The truth does not break with lies. She hung up without saying more. Before continuing, tell me here in the comments what you are thinking of this story so far and what you would do in her place. Do not leave the video because what comes next will give you goosebumps. That same night, while everyone was sleeping, I heard noises in the patio. I got up in silence and looked through the window. I saw the silhouette of a woman near the fence, my daughter. She was trying to enter without making noise. I took the phone and recorded. I saw her force the lock of the outdoor shed where we keep tools. I saw her search drawers, look for something. I knew perfectly what. My documents, the memory drive, any proof. I did not go out. I did not stop her. I let her act. When she realized she would find nothing, she fled. The next day, my wife woke up with new messages from her daughter. Insults, threats, pleas, promises, a whirlwind of manipulation that confirmed everything I already knew. Then I took the definitive decision. I kept all the evidence. I called a lawyer. And for the first time in my life, I understood that to save who you love, sometimes you must face the monster you yourself helped raise. The war was no longer silent. It had begun. That day, after my daughter's attempt to enter the patio, the silence of the house was no longer a refuge but a territory of surveillance. Every noise, every shadow, every vibration of the cell phone made my heart race. My wife did not stop shaking all morning. I feigned calm on the outside, but inside my mind did not stop. I knew we were no longer a family in conflict. We were two elderly people trapped in a dangerous game where betrayal bore our own last name. When my wife finished breakfast, I helped her sit on the sofa. I offered her medicine. Her hands were shaking so much I had to hold the glass for her. "Will she come again today?" she asked me in a whisper. "Maybe," I responded. But today we are no longer defenseless. She did not ask what I referred to. She knew something had changed inside me, and she also knew that change was irrevocable. I waited for her to fall asleep. Then I went straight to my desk. I took out the memory drive with the recording, connected it to the computer, and played again the scene I carried engraved in my mind, but that now I needed to register, with absolute clarity, for the path that was about to begin. Seeing it a second time was harder than the first. There was my wife from behind. There was my daughter entering with that determined step. I saw when she took her by the arm. I saw when she pushed her. I saw when my wife tried to protect herself with her hands. I saw when she forced her to sign. I saw when she faked the crying. Every second went through me like a slow stabbing. I did not turn off the video until the end. I needed to record every gesture in my memory, because that image would be the compass of everything I did from then on. I copied the file onto 2 more memory drives. One I hid inside the toilet tank in a sealed plastic bag. The other I put inside an old accounting book that no one had touched for years. The original I carried always with me inside the lining of my jacket. I knew my daughter would not stop. I knew she would return. And I also knew that every move of hers could become her own sentence if I was patient enough. That same day in the afternoon, my daughter called. "Dad," she said with a voice more docile than normal, "I want to talk properly with you two, without shouting, without drama." "You can come," I responded. "But with respect, I always respect you," she answered with a fake laugh. I hung up without arguing. She arrived at sunset. She brought a bag with fruit, as if she wanted to pretend that a normality still existed between us. My wife became rigid as soon as she saw her. I stepped forward. "Mom is tired," I told her. "You will talk to me." My daughter pressed her lips together but nodded. We sat face to face at the table. For the first time in many years, I looked at her without the filter of love. I looked at her as one looks at a stranger. "Dad," she began. "All this got out of control. Yes, but we can fix it. You keep the recording, I destroy those papers, and we pretend nothing happened. And who erases your mother's fear?" I asked. She lowered her gaze. It was a moment of anger, nothing more. "No," I responded. It was violence. And violence is not a mistake. It is a decision. My daughter got up from the chair. You do not understand anything she said, exalted. I was just protecting what is ours. The house is not yours, I answered her. The money is not yours, and your mother is not your possession either. Hate returned to her eyes. Sooner or later you will lose everything, she spat. You are old, Dad. The world is no longer for you. I felt deep pain, not for the insult, but because I knew that was her true way of thinking for a long time. If that is the world you built, I told her, I prefer to stay out of it. She approached me dangerously. What are you going to do? She whispered. Denounce me. Put me in jail. I am going to do justice, I responded calmly, even if that breaks my soul. She held my gaze for a few seconds. Then she turned abruptly and left without saying goodbye. My wife cried when I closed the door. Is she going to hurt us? She asked with a broken voice. I hugged her tight. She can no longer. But I knew that although she could not touch us physically again with the same ease she still had. Resources, lies, contacts, and a dangerous rage. That night we slept with the living room light on. The next day I received a notification from the bank. Someone had tried again to schedule an appointment using my wife's data. That person was, of course, our daughter. She did not call her. She did not scream at me. She went to the next level. Then I understood that it was no longer enough to wait for her to make more mistakes. I had to bring her closer to the exact place where she herself would expose herself completely. And for that, I needed something more than evidence. I needed witnesses. I called my younger brother. We had not spoken of deep family matters for years. I need you to come home, I told him, and bring a trusted lawyer. What happened? He asked, alarmed. Our daughter crossed a line that has no return. He kept silent for a few seconds. I am coming immediately. I hung up, feeling a huge weight on my chest. That would no longer be resolved only between four walls. Now the full last name would be exposed. That afternoon, while I waited for my brother, I went to the camera room for the last time in calm. I reviewed all the deleted files. I looked for traces. I found something else. Several recent external connections. Unknown addresses. Someone had accessed the system from outside the house. My daughter was not alone in this. That discovery froze my blood. She not only wanted our house, she had built something bigger, something dirty, something that now began to come to light. My brother arrived at nightfall, accompanied by a young, serious lawyer with a firm gaze. I told them everything without omitting a single detail. I showed the recording. My brother brought his hands to his face, seeing his niece hitting his sister-in-law. This is extremely serious, said the lawyer. We have a clear criminal case. My wife listened from the sofa, crying in silence. What will happen to her? She asked with guilt. The lawyer was honest. It will depend on what happens from here on out. But this is no longer just a family conflict. This is a crime. My brother took me by the shoulder. You did well not to keep quiet this time. I nodded, although inside I felt devastated. That same night we made the first legal decision, and I knew that what would come next could no longer be stopped. Because when justice begins to walk, no one can push it to go back. The day after my brother and the lawyer's visit dawned with a gray sky that seemed to reflect exactly what I carried inside. My wife did not want to get out of bed. Her eyes were swollen from crying so much and her body exhausted from weeks of accumulated tension. I did not force her. I prepared a hot infusion and sat by her side. None of this is your fault, I told her. Nothing. She squeezed my fingers weakly. She is my daughter, she whispered. I brought her into the world. And I too, I responded. But bringing someone into the world does not mean allowing them to destroy others. She remained silent. Her crying was softer now, as if at least a part of the weight had started to release. At 10 in the morning, I met again with my brother and the lawyer in the downtown library. I carried with me the main memory drive hidden in the lining of my jacket. The lawyer arranged the documents carefully while I narrated every detail with precision. We have proof of aggression, coercion, document forgery, and attempted asset stripping, he said finally. But for the case to be solid and not turn into a simple conflict of word against word, We need her to act again to expose herself. You mean I have to provoke her? I asked. Not provoke, he responded. Let her believe she still has options. My brother frowned. That is dangerous. Yes, said the lawyer, but it is also the most effective way to bring down someone who believes they have control. I understood it immediately. My daughter would not give up easily. She was used to manipulating, to moving in the shadows, to always getting her way. If she felt she had lost everything, she would make mistakes, and those mistakes would be her own sentence. I will talk to her, I said. I will make her believe I am willing to negotiate. The lawyer nodded, but no direct confrontations, he warned. Everything must remain recorded. Clear words, explicit intentions. That same day in the afternoon, I called her. Daughter, I told her with a tone that I myself forced to sound tired. We need to talk. Her voice sounded contained on the other end of the line. For what to end this once and for all? I am tired. Your mother is sick. I no longer have the strength to fight with you. There was a brief silence. I could imagine perfectly her mind working. And what do you propose? She asked finally. Come tomorrow afternoon. No shouting, no threats, just you and me. Will Mom be there too? No, I responded. She is very bad. This time it will just be you and me. She accepted. Her voice sounded victorious, although she tried to hide it. Okay, Dad. Let us talk like adults. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anticipation. The plan was in motion. That night, I explained everything to my wife, delicately. At first, she resisted. I'm afraid she will do something to you again, she said, or that she will hurt me again. She will not be able to, I responded firmly. We will be prepared. Everything will be recorded, and this time there will be no deleted cameras. She accepted reluctantly. In her eyes, I saw the terror of a mother faced with her own child, but I also saw something new, a deep need for justice. The next day, I prepared the house in a special way. I placed 2 hidden recorders, one on the dining room shelf, another under the armchair cushion. I activated the secondary camera without it being noticed. I left the main memory drive in the inside pocket of my jacket, always with me. At 4 in the afternoon, I saw her arrive through the window. She got out of the car with a sure step. She knocked once. Firm. I opened. Dad, she said with a fake smile. Can we fix this? Come in, I responded. She entered as if nothing had happened. She observed the living room carefully, surely looking for signs, cameras, witnesses. But the house seemed quiet, too quiet. We sat face to face. Tell me what you want, I said. My daughter crossed her arms. I want you to destroy that recording, and for us to sign the papers without more scandals. And in exchange, I take care of you, she responded. Of the doctors, the bills. You will live peacefully without worries. Or without rights, I asked. She narrowed her eyes. Dad, you are an old man. Time does not favor you. I do not want you to end up in a bed forgotten without anyone attending to you. That sounds more like a threat than a promise, I responded. She rested her hands on the table and leaned toward me. Call it what you want, but you know I can make it reality. Ice ran down my back. I looked at her steadily. I also know I can take you to prison. Her smile tensed. You do not have the courage to do it. You are wrong, I said. I was just missing one more proof, she frowned. What proof that you yourself admitted what you did? She kept silent. Her fingers tapped the table impatiently. I admit nothing, she said finally, because I did nothing wrong. You pushed your mother? I responded. You forced her to sign. You threatened her. She leaned in more. I did what I had to do, too. You two could no longer handle everything. Someone had to take control. Control is not taken with violence, I responded. You do not understand how the real world works. Dad, she said coldly, the weak always lose. I was not willing to lose. Her frankness pierced my chest. Those words were her true confession, even if she did not know it. And I am the weak one, I asked. You and Mom, she responded without hesitating. Both of you. I took a deep breath. Then let me ask you one last question, I said. If I had not seen that recording, how far would you have gone? She hesitated just a second. That second was enough. As far as necessary, she responded. There I knew it, without doubts, without remorse. The conversation ended, I said, standing up. Are you going to report me? She asked with a twisted smile. You are going to report yourself alone. She looked at me, not understanding. I slowly took the memory drive out of my pocket. Everything was recorded. I told her every word you just said. Her face decomposed completely. She jumped up. That is illegal. More illegal is what you did, I responded. She ran toward the door. I was already prepared. Before she could leave, the police, notified previously by the lawyer, entered through the back patio. 2 officers crossed the threshold in seconds. My daughter screamed. She tried to escape. They held her. You are detained for domestic violence, coercion document forgery, and attempted asset stripping, announced one of them. My daughter looked at me with a mixture of hate, fury, and pleading. Dad, she shouted, you cannot do this to me. I looked at her one last time. You started this when you touched your mother. They took her away screaming. I let myself fall into the chair, and I knew the worst was yet to come. The sound of sirens moving away with my daughter inside the patrol car remained suspended in the air like an echo impossible to erase. My wife remained seated at the end of the sofa, motionless as if her body had not yet understood that it was all over. I was still standing, leaning on the back of a chair with my legs trembling. From a tiredness that was not physical but a deep exhaustion of the soul. The police finished taking the data. They asked me to hand over the original recording to attach it to the file, and assured me that my daughter would spend the night in custody. When they closed the door for the last time, the house was left in a silence so intense that my ears hurt. I approached my wife slowly. I crouched in front of her. She is gone, I told her softly. She can no longer touch you. She took several seconds to react. Then she blinked, as if waking from a long and dark dream. Really, she whispered. Really, I responded. Then something happened that I had never seen in all our years together. My wife broke down crying with a cry so deep, so liberating that it seemed to drag every fear, every guilt, every humiliation she had accumulated for months. I hugged her tightly. I felt her body vibrate against mine. It was not a cry of sadness, it was a cry of survival. I am afraid, she said between sobs. Even though she is no longer here, I am still afraid. It is normal, I answered her. Fear does not go away at once, but now we have something stronger than it, what she asked with a broken voice. The truth. That night, neither of us could sleep. I made coffee at 2 a.m. We sat face to face at the same table, where we ate as a family so many times, ignoring that on that wood a silent war had been waged. She looked at the cup as if it cost her to hold something so simple without feeling that everything could break again. I never thought a daughter could do that, she murmured. I carried her 9 months inside me, and even so, I said with a knot in my throat, she chose the darkest path. My wife took a deep breath. Maybe we failed in something, you and I. Maybe I responded. But there is a truth we cannot keep carrying on our shoulders. Every person is responsible for their acts, even children. At dawn, the lawyer and my brother arrived. They brought new news. The formal complaint was already underway. The recording had been validated as main evidence, and there was proof that my daughter had tried to access our bank accounts using falsified documents. This is bigger than we imagined, said the lawyer. There are clear indications of fraud and systematic abuse. My wife listened in silence, squeezing my fingers. What will happen to her now? She asked. The lawyer was honest. There will be a process, or she can face prison, but everything will depend on what is proven in the hearing. The word prison fell on my wife like a stone. She lowered her head. She is our daughter, and she was also your aggressor, said my brother firmly. If this does not stop now, it would have been worse. I did not want to argue. A mother's pain is not appeased with arguments. That same day, the first calls began to arrive. Relatives we had not seen for years. neighbors, even old friends. The news spread quickly through the neighborhood. The daughter of the Williams family was arrested for hitting her mother and trying to take everything from them. Some offered sincere support. Others just wanted to confirm the gossip. My wife did not want to answer the phone. I answered with few words. I did not want our tragedy to become a spectacle. In the afternoon, I received the call I knew would arrive sooner or later. "Dad," said the voice on the other end of the line. It was her. "I'm not allowed to talk to you," she continued, "but I asked for this call not only so you know something." "Speak," I responded with my chest tight. All this got out of hand. "I never wanted it to go that far. It went that far because you pushed it," I responded. Every day she kept silence for a few seconds. "Mom always protected me more than she should have," she said. "She always forgave me everything, and I got used to that. And when she stopped doing it, you hit her." My daughter cried on the other side of the phone. I did not want to hurt her. Damage is not always done with intention, I told her. Sometimes it is done out of ambition, out of selfishness, out of believing oneself above others. "Do you hate me?" she asked. The question went through me like a knife. "No," I responded with a hoarse voice, "but I can no longer protect you from the consequences of your actions." She hung up without saying more. I stayed looking at the phone, turned off for a long time. My wife watched me from the door. "Was it her?" she asked. I nodded. She said she never wanted it to go that far. My wife closed her eyes. "I did not want this to happen either," she whispered, "but it happened." That night I put her back to sleep. I stayed awake by her side, holding her hand like someone caring for someone who has just come out of a shipwreck and still does not dare to believe that solid ground is real. 2 days later, they called us from the courthouse. There was a preliminary hearing date. We had to present ourselves. The road to the courthouse was silent. The streets seemed different. Everything seemed different. In the building, the atmosphere was cold, impersonal, as if justice needed distance to act. My daughter was brought in handcuffed. When I saw her, something inside me broke. Her face was pale eyes, swollen hands trembling. She was no longer the confident woman who hit her mother. She was an accused facing for the first time the real consequences of her actions. We looked into each other's eyes. She lowered her gaze. The hearing was hard. Evidence was presented. The recording was played before everyone. My wife squeezed my fingers tightly, trembling. When that scene in the kitchen appeared on the screen, several in the room looked down. My daughter sobbed in silence. The judge was clear. There were sufficient elements to formally charge her. Pre-trial detention was decreed while the investigation continued. The sound of the gavel sealed an instant I will never forget. My wife broke into tears. I felt an immense void. It was not relief. It was not victory. It was the confirmation of an irreversible tragedy. Leaving the courthouse, my wife stopped on the sidewalk. She took a deep breath. "She can no longer touch us," she said finally. "For the first time in a long time, I feel I can breathe." I hugged her. Me too, but inside me I knew that the hardest part of all still remained. Learning to live with the wound that love leaves when it becomes a weapon. And that learning was yet to begin. The days that followed the hearing were strange, as if time had changed rhythm. My wife woke up startled in the middle of the night, believing she heard our daughter's voice in the house. I got up immediately. I turned on the lights, checked every corner. Everything was always silent. But fear, when it has lived too long inside a person, does not leave so easily. We received visits we never imagined. Brothers, cousins, old acquaintances. Some came to support us. Others came moved by curiosity. I learned to recognize quickly who arrived with an open heart and who only sought to feed their morbid curiosity. The latter I dismissed with politeness and firmness. We had already been exposed too much. The lawyer called us on the third day. The investigation was advancing fast. They had found attempted bank transfers, loan applications in our name, and previous contacts of my daughter with a corrupt manager. That was no longer just a case of family violence. It was a web of deceit that had been woven for months. This was not impulsive, the lawyer told us. She planned everything with a lot of time and anticipation. My wife listened with pressed lips. I saw how every word hit her, like a truth she was not yet ready to assimilate completely. "And now what will happen?" she asked with a trembling voice. "Now the formal process begins," he responded. "There will be hearings, witnesses, psychological expertise. You will have to declare." My wife shuddered. I do not want to see her again." "You will not see her directly if you do not want to," he reassured her. "The law protects you." That night while we dined in silence, my wife broke down crying suddenly. "I still dream of her as a child," she told me. "I see her small with the red ribbon in her hair, running through the patio, and then I wake up and remember everything, and I feel my heart cannot handle so much." I took her face gently. "No one can stop loving from one day to the next," I responded. "Love does not disappear by decree, but that does not mean we must allow that love to destroy us." She closed her eyes and rested her forehead on my chest. "I'm afraid I have created a monster." "No," I told her, "you created a daughter. What she became later was her choice." Days later, I received another call from the jail. It was our daughter again. I hesitated a few seconds before answering. Finally I did. "Dad," she said with a dull voice I almost did not recognize. "Mom, how is she?" "She is alive," I responded. That is already saying a lot. There was a sob on the other side. "I never wanted to kill her." "But you broke her inside," I told her, "and that also leaves wounds that sometimes do not heal." She kept silent. "Dad, I am afraid," she whispered. "Here everything is different. Everything is dark. I do not belong in this place." "You do not belong to the place where you were either," I responded with sadness. "You yourself walked away from it." "Are they going to condemn me? That will be decided by a judge," I said, "not me." "Will Mom say something against me?" I looked at my wife, who was listening from the other room without saying a word. "Mom will tell the truth," I responded. "And the truth, daughter, this time is not on your side." The call cut off with a long sob. I stayed looking at the phone with the bitter sensation of having definitely buried something that could no longer be saved. A week later came the day of our declaration. The judge received us in a small, sober room. My wife was pale, nervous, but firm. I remained by her side, holding her hand. When they asked her to relate what happened, her voice trembled at first. Then she became firmer. She told every blow, every threat, every forced signature. She spoke of the fear of the sleepless nights, of the humiliations. She spoke of our own house turned into a silent prison. I had never heard her speak with such clarity. When she finished, the judge remained silent for a few seconds. "What you have lived through is very serious," he said finally, "and I assure you, it will be taken into account with the full weight of the law." My wife broke down crying, but this time not from fear. She cried from recovered dignity. Leaving the courthouse, some journalists were waiting. I placed my body in front of her, protecting her from the cameras, as I had done so many times in our life against other simpler dangers. "My wife needs peace, not attention," I said firmly. "Respect that." We left in silence. With the passing of days, reactions began to arrive from people I never imagined would take sides. Some aunts defended our daughter, saying we were exaggerating, that pressure had led her to make mistakes, that all families have problems. But others, many more, supported us. Neighbors, friends of years, people who had noticed changes in my wife and never dared to ask. My brother stayed several days with us. He helped us organize papers, block accounts, cancel false documents. Little by little, the sensation of threat was receding. The house returned to feeling slowly like a home. Until one afternoon, a letter arrived from the courthouse. My wife looked at me, nervous, seeing it. "Open it, you," she asked me. I did it with firm hands. It was the formal request for expanded testimony. Our daughter had decided to defend herself, alleging that my wife was psychologically altered, and that I had manipulated her to take revenge for old grudges. My wife brought her hand to her chest. "You see," she whispered, "she still wants to destroy us." I hugged her tightly. "She can no longer," I told her. "Now the truth speaks, and the truth does not need to shout to impose itself." The trial began weeks later. We declared, the experts spoke, the evidence was shown over and over again. My daughter from the stand avoided looking at us. When she did, it was only to stick a look full of reproach at me. I held it without blinking because she could no longer hurt me. Days later, the provisional resolution arrived. Prolonged pretrial detention due to flight risk and preventive embargo of any document she had managed to sign fraudulently. My wife collapsed on the sofa when she heard the news. "She can no longer take anything from us," she murmured. "She never could," I responded. "She only believed she did." That night we had dinner in calm for the first time in a long time. The house was silent, but it was no longer a silence of fear. It was a silence of tiredness, of mourning, and of accepting a reality we never imagined living. Before sleeping, my wife took my hand. If I were born again, she told me I would do everything differently except one thing. What thing? Choosing you again. My eyes moistened because although our family had been broken by blood betrayal, the love between us two was still intact, and that in the middle of so much darkness remained a small victory. The day the final sentence was dictated dawned gray, as if the sky also doubted, showing itself luminous before what was about to happen. My wife got up early in silence with slow movements, as if her body knew that day would mark an end that would have no turning back. I watched her from the bedroom door, trying not to show the storm I carried inside. We had waited for that moment for weeks, but being close to something does not make it lighter. Sometimes it makes it even heavier. We prepared without saying almost a word. I served her coffee. She barely tasted it. Leaving the house, she looked one last time towards the interior, as if she feared not recognizing herself in that place after what would come. I took her hand tightly. We did not need to speak to know that we both felt the same: fear, guilt, sadness, and a small hope for peace. The courthouse was full. The air was tense, loaded with whispers. When we entered the room, my heart began to beat in my chest, with a force that made me fear for my own heartbeats. My daughter was already there, dressed in sober clothes, hair tied back, face pale. She did not look like the same woman who had screamed, threatened, and hit. But I knew that was just another of her masks. I avoided looking at her. My wife could not. When their eyes met, I saw how her body shuddered. I hugged her by the shoulders, not allowing her to retreat. She had to be there not as a silent victim, but as a woman who had decided to face her truth. The judge spoke with a firm tone. The charges were read: domestic violence, coercion, document forgery, attempted asset stripping. Every word was like a hammer falling on a story that should never have been written like this. Then they gave the floor to my daughter. She stood up with trembling hands. Her voice at first was barely a whisper. She tried to justify herself. She spoke of stress, of economic problems, of feeling alone, of having carried too much responsibility. She said she never wanted to hurt her mother, that it just got out of hand. I listened to everything without interrupting. Part of me wanted to scream that she was lying. Another part, much more tired, just wanted to end. When it was my wife's turn to speak, time seemed to stop. She walked slowly to the front. I felt her hand tremble inside mine before letting go. I thought she would not be able to do it. I thought she would break, but no. She raised her head and spoke with a weak voice. Yes, but clear, firm. Every word was a declaration of dignity. She told everything from the first push to the last threat. From the moment of being left alone to the terror of signing without understanding. She did not adorn anything, she did not exaggerate. She just told the truth. And the truth, when finally pronounced, weighs like a rock, I declared after. I spoke of the recording of the documents, of how I saw my own daughter force her mother to sign something she did not understand. I did not cry. I did not shout. Every word cost me my life. But I knew I had to say it with serenity, Because justice does not need rage, it needs facts. The judge asked for a recess. The silence in the room was brutal. The nervous breathing of those waiting could be heard. My wife did not stop squeezing a small rosary between her fingers. I looked at the floor, trying not to fall into the abyss of memories. When the judge returned, we all stood up. I felt a strange vertigo as if my whole body rejected that instant. Then I heard the words that would change our lives forever. My daughter was declared guilty, guilty of violence, guilty of coercion, guilty of fraud. The sentence included effective prison time and the annulment of all documents signed under pressure. My wife let out a moan. I held her by the waist so she would not fall. My daughter cried. Not with rage, with desperation. For the first time, her crying was no longer a tool. It was defeat. When they took her away, she crossed her gaze with me one last time. In her eyes, there was no longer hate nor defiance. Only a mute question I did not know nor wanted to answer. The door closed behind her with a dry thud that echoed inside my chest like thunder. Leaving the courthouse, my wife took a deep breath. The air seemed different, less heavy, more real. "Is it over?" she whispered. "Yes," I responded. "It is over." But it was not a happy ending. It was a necessary ending, and sometimes life only offers us that. The following days were strange. The house was calm, but a calm made of absences. Our daughter's bedroom remained closed. No one dared to enter. Finally, one afternoon, my wife asked me to do it together. We opened the door. Everything remained the same. The bed made, her clothes in the closet, her objects on the shelves. It was like a shrine of someone who no longer belonged to that home. My wife sat on the bed and brought her hands to her face. She cried in silence. I remained standing, not knowing what to do. There are no manuals for closing the door of the heart to a child. With time, we began to rebuild ourselves. My wife started therapy. She went back to sleeping without startles. She started walking through the garden, watering the plants, talking without fear. I watched her with a mixture of joy and sadness. I saw her reborn, and at the same time I saw the shadow of our daughter in every gesture. One afternoon, while we were drinking coffee under the sun, my wife looked at me and said, "If you had not arrived that day, I would not be here." I squeezed her hand tightly. "If you had not had the courage to speak, I would still be blind." We looked at each other in silence. Two older people who had gone through the greatest tragedy of their lives caused by someone they loved with all their soul. I knew then that true love is not naive, that loving is not allowing anything, that sometimes to save who you love, you must do it even from who hurts them the most, even if that someone carries your same blood. My wife smiled weakly. "Now I just want to live in peace," she said. "And you will have it," I responded, although we are no longer the same as before, because we never went back to being so. The price of seeing the truth was high. We lost a daughter. We lost an illusion. We lost the idea of a perfect family. But we did not lose the most important thing, life dignity, and the light we still had left. And so in that small garden where so many times the three of us had laughed, my wife and I understood that love, when it stops being blind, hurts, but also liberates. Some months have passed since that day in the courthouse. Today the house smells of coffee in the mornings and freshly toasted bread again. My wife walks more upright, sleeps without startles, and sometimes even hums old songs again while watering the garden plants. I watch her in silence, thanking every small gesture we took for granted before. It has not been easy. No wound that bears the name of a child heals quickly. There are days when she stays looking out the window with lost eyes, and I know exactly who she is thinking of. In those moments, I say nothing. I just approach and take her hand. We already learned that there are pains that are not cured with words, but with presence. Our daughter is serving her sentence. We have not seen her again. Sometimes I wonder if one day I will be able to look at her without the past going through my chest. I do not know, nor do I know if she will one day understand all the damage she caused. The only thing I know is that I did what I had to do as a husband and as a man. Today we live with less fear and with more truth. And although we lost something irrecoverable, we also saved something much more valuable: our lives and our dignity. If this story reached you, I want you to know something. It is never too late to say enough. It is never too late to protect who you love. And it is never too late to face the truth, however painful it may be. I am William, and this was my story. Subscribe to the channel so you can continue accompanying us with more real and touching stories. Like this video if this story touched your heart. Leave us a comment telling us what you thought of this story, what you would have done in my place, and from which city you are watching us. I read every message. Your support gives us strength to continue telling stories that matter. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening. Thank you for not looking the other way.